Hi, Walla.
Hi, Zainab.
How are you?
I am doing well. Time is flashing.
It
I
is.
keep thinking it's like the day before. I thought today was like Thursday. It's Friday.
But this is Walla Elsheikh. And me and her know each other because we do contract coaching work for a mutual organization. And when I first met you, Walla, I just loved your energy. A lot of the people that we work with, I really love their energy. So we may see a few more of our coworkers.
I love
Yes,
coaches. Like coaching energy people are just like
yes,
we're
yes.
champions of other people. So it's such positive vibes.
I wanted to start with having you just tell us your
Mhm.
career story, like what was the evolution of Voila to this point, because she's still evolving. So
Yes. And I love that you use the term career story. I use the term career story so intentionally, especially because people get so like caught up and anxious and nervous about this process
yes,
of like
yes.
finding that job, that career that aligns to who they are. I mean, my story, it's so fascinating. If you would have told me I'm doing what I'm doing now is what I would be doing when I first graduated college, I would have been like, whose
Yeah,
life are you talking about? Because I studied
yeah.
finance undergrad very intentionally. I came in knowing I wanted to be a businesswoman. Like that was like when I was 11 years old, I saw those business suits on women on television. I was like, I want to look like that. I want to be the boss lady. I want to run things. I love math.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a surprise. I did it. I tracked exactly the way you're supposed to. I got those smaller jobs that led to the internships in finance undergrad that led to the full-time offer. Worked on Wall Street for 4 years in accounting, finance
Hmm.
division. I love the
For a
organizational
big firm,
culture.
by the way,
Big
not
firm.
to
I
big
worked at
firm.
Goldman Sachs. I didn't even realize I was entering this world at the highest level. And I actually loved the organization culture. It was very
Hmm.
entrepreneurial, very collaborative, very team oriented. And so I thought I was going to stay there for like 20, 30 years, do that whole thing and retire and then live this life of impact, right? Because that was always
Yeah.
in me though. I was always mentoring upcoming analysts. I was part of Network, Firm-wide Black Network, National Association of Black Accountants, but I wasn't really tapping into the same circle for my own mentorship and sponsorship. I just wanted to give, give, give. But there was
Yeah.
this other side to me. And after a while, I started to realize passion was education for me and that it wasn't just something I wanted to do on the side. That coincided with this feeling of being disconnected to my understanding of history and self that permeated as I was navigating this corporate culture when my friend could tell I didn't understand what being Black in corporate America was going to be about.
Mm.
Right. And so I'm
Yeah.
on this like Black immigrant here, by the way, came from Sudan, very much wide open, land of opportunity. My parents telling us you're here for your education. So I did the thing, right? Like I followed through and I got this career, this job. I made it, American Dream. She was just like, well, do you know what happened to Black people in America? Like, do you understand what you're about to, like, what you are in? No
Yeah.
clue. Start deep diving into this world of history, which, by the way, turns out I actually loved history in school. I just
Hmm.
never cared to read and write that much, to study
Hmm.
it and pursue it academically or professionally. I dived personally after college into this world of understanding Black American history. And then it helped me realize I didn't even know my own African history. Like we weren't
Mm.
taught in schools at all. And
Yeah.
it was realizing I hadn't been back home to Sudan in 15 years at that. I'm starting to realize it's important to know history to navigate who you are in a confident way, especially if you're going to be a particular identity that's marginalized. And I was starting to feel those microaggressions and internalized oppressions, working double as hard, not knowing it,
Hmm.
feeling like I couldn't make mistakes. I'm the only one or two I gotta represent. I can't drop the ball. I didn't have the word microaggression. I didn't realize. I just knew, okay, diversity is a thing. I need to be a part of it. The nail that hit the coffin was learning of two friends of Jewish descent getting a birthright back to their homeland. And I was like, wait a minute.
Oh.
I need this. I'm going through these things. I realized I don't know my history and culture, and there's a paid free trip for these folks. Why don't we have a Birthright Africa? That set me on a path to fulfill a purpose
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
career, and
Yeah.
everything led from there.
That's beautiful. A quick question. Were you born in Sudan or no?
I was, but
You were born and then you moved here.
very quickly. No, no, no. It's
Oh.
all been around the world and
Oh yeah,
I.
yeah, yeah.
Like my first recollections are not Sudan. My dad joined the Foreign Services of Sudan, and his first assignment was Sweden. So I grew up around Swedish kids. Talk about loss of identity. So I'm
Yeah.
forming as this, child, global child, because you don't know that you're different until it starts kind of poking its head a little bit. But as a child, just want to play, just want to hang out. Sweden was very idyllic in the sense of, very safe, very driven by high standards of society, and
Mm-hmm.
pretty welcoming, especially at the time. Still is
Mm-hmm.
for the most part to immigrant family. But at 7, we left. My dad got reassigned. We waited a year for him to be reassigned in Sudan. So I did get exposure to my country, to my culture at 7. Best time playing with my cousins. Like, that's what
Mm-hmm.
Sudan was about. And went to a British school there. So let's keep track of this,
Yeah.
because it all connects back to what I'm
Yeah.
doing now. We land in Uganda, living, the diplomatic life for real now. I'm seeing us in mansions, all the help in the house that my mom could need, chauffeured to school, to the
Yeah.
American International School. Then
Mm.
then there's a coup, government change. My dad gets ousted, has to look for work. Long story short, lands a consulting gig at the UN in New York. We get to New York in 1990, September 6th, 3 days before.
So you were like 1990, you were like 11
Going on
when you came.
11. I grew up a very global citizen,
Yeah.
multicultural
Yeah.
child, and then I'm integrated into New York City. Perfect seamless transition. Queens, which is like literally we call ourselves the world borough. There's over
Yeah.
180 languages spoken, and
Shout
the
out to
neighborhood.
Queens.
I'm a queen from Queens, especially the neighborhood I was in was pretty diverse, and so
Yeah.
and I'm speaking the American English already
Yeah.
coming from.
Already. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's beautiful.
I was an American before I got to America. Like, you couldn't tell me I wasn't.
That's
So that's why I
yeah.
drank the Kool-Aid even more. I'm going to be in America. I'm going to make this dream happen. I'm never leaving.
Yeah.
Forget leaving New York.
We're going to talk about your organization and just the whole journey to your birthright journey. But
Yeah.
I want to circle back a little bit because you said something about not understanding the experience of, I guess, having a normal naivete about the experience of a Black person in corporate America. And I was
Mm-hmm.
wondering, because you had an international experience and then
Mm-hmm.
also the immigrant experience, although you moved to New York, do you feel like that had an effect on you not really grasping what you were walking into?
Oh, yeah. I mean, had I grown up in the South somewhere where it was like an all-white city,
Yeah.
totally different
Yeah.
experience. I understand the stories of my friends and people who grew up in those kinds of environments. And they understood. My friend who asked me, Walla, do you know what happened to Black people in America? She knew. She was a Congolese American, but had
Mm.
grown up in certain environments and also went to FAMU. So she went to HBCU. She was rooted in college in an identity and an understanding. I come here, and some people think I came here and we were diplomats still. No, we lost that. We were immigrants starting from the bottom up,
Wow.
but it was very much like everyone was around us with that international experience. And so it felt like anyone could make it in America. Because I'm also seeing people who are Puerto Rican, Asian American,
Yeah.
and even some of these white immigrants that come more recently to New York, right? There's
Yeah.
an immigrant experience of the Polish and the Russian. Italians, we're all in equal footing because I'm coming from this naive, and I'm just generally that optimistic, we are the world person. Anyone who knows me
Mm-hmm.
knows that about me. So it takes a lot for me to be like, to understand
Yeah.
disparity and unfairness. I got a sense that there was this Black struggle, but I'm also growing up in the 90s where there's a lot of affirmation about who we were on television.
Yeah.
And I was excelling. I was at the top of my class. There wasn't as many Black people around me. This is where, again, if you don't understand, it's like, well, why aren't they here?
Yeah.
You don't understand there's a systematic thing going on.
Yes.
But
Yes.
centuries that has led to. And if you're not taught that in the schools, in
Yeah.
understanding the system of America that has created where we are today, which is why
Yes.
they don't want to teach it. Then you're going to
Yes.
maintain that ignorance and that sense of possibility without understanding a bias that is still around that.
Present. Something I want to say is because I have a parent who immigrated here too. And there was a point, even today, but there was a point where immigration in the United States was highly promoted, right? Because it was financially lucrative for the United States. We're now living in a time now that it's become tied with xenophobia and racism and all of these things. But
Mm-hmm.
in the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s, it was like, come here, right? There's an economic benefit to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times in other parts of the world, coming to the US was sold as this like amazing dream.
It
All
still
you got
is.
to do is work. Yeah, it
It
still
still
is.
is.
In my opinion, one of the differences is social media.
Absolutely.
Because a
Oh, yeah.
lot of the things that there was like a slightly propaganda influenced vision of what living in the US is going to be like this. All you gotta do is come here and work hard and da 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 da, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard this before from other Black people who came here, and it was a reality check in
Yes.
terms of working in these white spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say that people were naive to the system, but it was very much sold. And I think part of the reason why immigration was promoted was because it was also like when these people come here, we'll force them to assimilate.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
listening to another
Oh,
podcast
yeah. I
and
was
he was
proud to
talking,
assimilate. Let's be clear.
yes.
I was proud. I was
And
like,
it was like you
I'm
had
never,
no other choice. You had to do it.
but not even knowing to try. I willingly chose. It was a
Yeah.
pride to be as American as possible. And like, yeah, I'm Sudanese, I'm African, but that's not what's going to make me a success in
Yeah.
America. So let's assimilate out. And if that means I lose my culture, that's just what has to happen. That is like literally the antithesis of what needs to
Yeah.
happen.
Yes. And I physically saw that with my parents because my mother
Mm-hmm.
was from New York and my dad was from Trinidad. And so
Mm.
my mom grew up, and then my grandparents on my mom's side were both from the South.
Okay.
So they grew up understanding living in the system. As where my dad had an awareness, but I think he was still very much in the I'm going to work hard to succeed. And I remember times when there would be conversations, and
Mm.
my mom was the more aware of certain things that were not said publicly, right?
Yeah.
And she wasn't afraid to challenge certain things, right? Even in college, she was like exploring. New York City, it's like try everything. She was exploring
Yeah.
different mindsets and things like that, which eventually led her to become Muslim.
Mm.
But I remember distinctly seeing two different worlds with my parents in terms of Black experience. I would say that my mom's had the stronger influence. And
Well,
also my dad he eventually started to
had
understand.
you had a balanced perspective. Imagine
Yeah.
both my parents are like your dad. I had
Yeah.
no context for racism. I even asked them a few years ago. We were watching Africa's Greatest Civilizations, Henry Louis
Uh-huh.
Gates, 6-part series
Yes.
on PBS. If you want to
Yes.
understand the greatness of African history and contributions to the world that have not been told, watch that. He
Okay.
was like pivotal in my whole journey to like starting my early 20s to get to this part of my career where I now lead an organization ensuring our young people understand who they are. And we start in the US and physically bring them to the continent to understand that culture and the innovation that has occurred because of our heritage.
Mm-hmm.
I remember asking my parents, it was the night of Sudan. We're learning about Kush and all that, where there
Mm-hmm.
are pyramids
Mm-hmm.
in Sudan, by the way, that I never knew
Mm-hmm.
existed. Because I looked back at
Wow.
them and I was like, how did you not tell me we have pyramids in Sudan? And we're not even visiting these places. They don't understand the importance of that.
Yeah.
Also, I asked, why didn't you teach me about racism? Like, how dare you bring me to America and not teach me this thing? They're like, we don't really know it either. It's also New York City. It's not in your face. Like, I've yet
Yeah.
to be called the N word to my face, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
it's different context. And so I can't even blame them. And the other
Yeah.
reason
Me too.
immigrants have to hold on to this idea of success and opportunities because a lot of us are escaping economic, political, or
Yeah.
whatever oppression in our own homeland, and it's not a viable option there either. So if
Yeah.
I've come to America by choice to ensure that stability for me and my family, I have to hold on to this idea. Otherwise,
Yeah.
what else is there? It turns from an American dream to an American nightmare quickly. Be aware of what you're going to have to navigate around. Don't be clueless and naive that there is still bias
Yeah.
in the system. I'm now very conscious.
Yeah. Be aware, not necessarily anxious, right? Anxiety is where we have the potential of losing our sense of empowerment, right?
I think it's so important because this is worthy of getting therapy around. And
Yes.
I am struggling sometimes with, and it's gonna just get worse, unfortunately, with the level of comfort in the racism and the biases that are in our system. Luckily, I'm in the work of ensuring our young people, like this is why Birthright Africa is so much more important than I could have even imagined. We are connecting them to their roots on the continent, to see the continent as a place of future possibility, investment, opportunity as well. But most of us are still going to come back here, right? This is where our lives still are. And in the long term, it could end up being somewhere different. But while we have to be here, the level of pride and confidence that we want to ensure is instilled in you to continue to navigate a system that may continue to devalue you, but to ensure you have that community, that support of networks, access to career opportunities, entrepreneurship opportunities, in spite of, to continue to believe
Yeah.
in future limitless possibilities. That American
Yes.
dream, to release any anxiety around that, is what this birthright journey is also about. And as young people get older and become more informed, they're
Hmm.
ensuring the next generation and the next generation. It's just gap in that understanding of self that
Yeah.
it's no longer serving us and is a detriment to your future
Yes.
if you don't have a sense of self and
Yes.
community of that.
Yes. I agree. So, can you take us back to when you started? How long has your organization been around?
So at 24 is when the Birthright Africa journey comes to me. This could be my calling. I could see how, but I'm not ready yet. This requires a certain level of understanding of management, leadership, the nonprofits education space. So I took another 10 years, got my MBA, jumped into the space of education, focused on college and career readiness. That's where
Mm-hmm.
this love and passion for career coaching also comes in. And I ensured that that was a component of Birthright, to expose young people to the leaders and entrepreneurs of African descent that help them see the possibility there for them too. Because our schools don't always do a good job of exposing the real world. So we incorporated in 2015,
Okay.
10 years after the idea came to me. And so we've been building this collaborative ecosystem of partners in education, specifically high school, college, community-based organizations. But we also open to corporate partners, influencer partners. Judeno's on our executive board. He brought a group of young people to the continent last year. Parent partners. Anyone looking to bring young people to the continent can really come to us. We provide the technical support and guidance. We've had 10 partners since 2015, created a virtual community. The pandemic really kicked that into gear. We have over 27,000 young people that have told us they want this birthright experience. We've only gotten to a
Wow.
little over 100. And so we're scaling to work with 100 partners plus around the country,
Yes.
around the U.S., pinpointing particular cities where there's a density of those of us of Black African descent. It's been really amazing to see those who are like-minded come and find their place in the ecosystem in this community. And we're excited for some notable partners next year to continue.
That's beautiful. So you've done the trips already, right? You've been
We've
doing
done
trips.
10. I've facilitated 3 groups early on as part of piloting, replicating, really fine tuning the model. Half our cohorts want to go to Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
South Africa, Kenya are popular, but we're open to any nation that a partner chooses as long as it's deemed safe to travel.
Mm-hmm.
There's eligibility requirements for the scholars, mainly that you're a U.S. citizen, ages 13 to 30. You
Oh,
can
wow.
register with us to tell us that you want this opportunity. We look to match you with a program in your city or one that may be open to a nationwide cohort. A lot of our partners come already with the participants they want. We're really here to make it work for the community the way that the community wants it to work. And so it's a customizable, flexible model. We just ensure that there's an innovation component to the in addition to the cultures, besides going to
Mm-hmm.
cultural sites, museums, we want to ensure they're going to places of innovation and entrepreneurship, places of government buildings, work sites where you see leaders and entrepreneurs. They're coming and sharing their career story, telling
Yeah.
how they got to where they got, because it's that understanding and especially what they've had
Mm-hmm.
to overcome. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
stories I did not have and why I internalized a lot of the oppression while I was a young corporate professional. And I'm going through this
Mm.
all by myself. Whoo, was I so
Yeah.
wrong? And they would say,
Yeah.
had there been a birthright while I was at Goldman, I probably would still be there. But it wasn't. I needed to start it,
Yeah.
understand this pride and confidence I had to have for myself. And then I'm that person, that educator that wants to make sure if I discover something can change someone's life and make a difference in their future, then I have to share this with the world. And having a dual understanding, being a continental African, but having been raised here since the age of
Yeah.
11, there's a duality there that I can really bring to the work. And it's my passion to travel, to discover culture and history. I got to tap in both to my business brain and my art culture brain to do this work.
Yeah.
And so it's been amazing to see purpose aligned to my career. And that's how I coach too.
Yes.
Like, it's possible to align your interests, your skills, your values, and then really build legacy through that. We're going to work all these hours
Yes.
all day long. Why not make it innately who we are, authentic? And there's a level of peace and freedom to that no money can really buy.
I'm glad you touched on that because one of the things that I learned from you, we entered each other's lives. I was at a point where I was transitioning into working for myself. And I remember one of the things I've struggled with was like how to make my schedule, like how to create a lifestyle for myself that was productive. Yeah, like I felt a sense of guilt because I wasn't working. And I remember just talking to you, it was something to the extent of the way that you operate now is almost like out of intuition of
Mm.
self, right? Like so
Mm-hmm.
you get your work done, but you're consciously aware of like it was almost like I don't really allow myself to to get caught up in I got to be productive in this way and da da da. You're very free flowing in, or that's what you expressed. I don't know. Your
I'm trying
face
to
was like,
connect it, like, because people get caught up in status, right? I guess, and
yeah, it
how much
wasn't
money they
status. It
make.
was like just
What?
physical work of like constantly feeling like
Oh, you have to be
you
productive in
had to,
doing.
yes.
Oh
And it
no.
was,
Yeah,
yeah,
I released that a long time ago, when, because the other thing is, like, I constantly find myself having to be productive. So I'm very
yeah,
intentional about, like, when is my downtime? When is my ability to recalibrate? And I cannot be effective and authentic if I'm not restoring myself. And shout out to this group of amazing Jamaican American women who started a focus on this idea of a relaxed hustle. Look them up from
yes.
Transcend. It's like we're all in this hustle, getting stuff and work done. But, like, is that what life is supposed to be all the time? And so I was doing virtual work before the pandemic. So when that was
Mm-hmm.
exposed to me through another company, I was like, oh, Birthright is going to be a virtual organization. So when the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic happened, I was like, oh, I'm so glad everyone now finally gets it and understands it. They don't look at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And it's afforded me to envision, since 10 years ago, a bicontinental life living between the US and America. I'm sorry, the
Mm-hmm.
US and Ghana, somewhere in
And
Africa.
Ghana, yeah.
10 years
Yeah.
ago, I was like, I need to get out of this New York City winter weather. I believe our careers should work around us. I also
Yes.
gathered there was going to be some real political challenges in the air. My immigrant
Yeah.
census. Remember, I'm a child of a diplomat who had to escape a country because of a regime change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, people. So
Yeah.
I wanna, if I'm gonna talk about Birthright Africa, and Africa is this place of possibility and opportunity. First, I was gonna go to Caribbean because I love beaches. Every month, I would hop on a plane. But I was like, hey, we have beaches in Africa. My work, Birthright Africa, is gonna bring me there. So let's just take it all the way back to the motherland. Then I happened to meet my husband in Ghana, and then, of course, that sealed the deal. So I believe in the integration of your personal life with
Mm-hmm.
the career. That is first and foremost. I had a career coach in business school when I got my MBA tell me, pick the city that you want to live in first and then the job. That's a game changer,
Oof.
right? Because your life
Yeah.
is in that city first, then your job. And
Yeah.
so you got to love where you live. You got to love people, the community that you're building as much as this job. And so we're picking a city. We're going to pick a continent. We're going to pick a country.
Yes.
and ensure that it all aligns. It's part of the alignment
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been
And the level
easy,
of,
but
yeah.
I will say there is such a satisfaction in having a vision and align and your career vision aligning to a life vision, and just it makes you overcome the challenges that much more that come at you because you understand this vision, and it feels so authentic that you can't be questioned. You know when you'll be abandoning yourself if you didn't
Yeah.
pursue it. So it's so satisfying and gratifying, which is why I don't
Yeah.
like to see people compromise who they are
Yeah.
for a job and a
And
career. No, don't compromise. It can align.
yeah. And that's that intuition that if we betray it,
Yes,
like you mentioned, we diminish our authenticity, right?
absolutely.
And a lot of times when I speak to especially women in their 40s and older and even in their 30s, one of the lessons that they say that they learned was to trust their intuition more, right?
Can we talk
And
about that for a hot second? We started on that note of women's
yes.
emotional intelligence.
Yes, I
Being
wrote it down. Go ahead and say it.
emotional intelligence, women's emotional intelligence, is literally our superpower that has
Hmm.
been robbed of us because of patriarchy, sexism, whatever you call it. So you're being too emotional. Now, when someone says that to me, I'm like, yes, and why aren't you being emotional too? We're talking
Yes.
about care and empathy and leadership. All of a sudden, we
Yes.
want to, who does empathy the best? Like women care so much more. We
Yeah.
have a caring gene that we can't turn off. And yet
Yes.
we've been oppressed to turn it off,
Yes.
and then we abandon and we mimic these masculine energies that are ruining the world. I'm so unapologetic. It's not just men, it's masculine energies. So there's the women
Yeah,
in
I
there
agree.
too. But it's the men really
Yes.
driving it because that's what has been valued. And
Yes.
next thing after making sure Black people are empowered is I'm a woman. So at
Yes.
this point, it's very clear if we don't get to a place of balance. We're 50% of the world's population. Why are we
Yeah.
not at least 40 to 60? And when you look at the societies that have done it, because there are, not just in Europe, Rwanda, check Rwanda, people, the health outcomes, the educational outcomes, societal outcomes, the peace, the prosperity
Yeah.
that is shared
Yes.
because we don't feel the need to have everything money, power, control.
Yes.
And I was told in Africa that the
Yeah.
real battle is it's on a spiritual level, which everything is, right?
Yes.
Because I asked this spiritual father, I'm like, what is this fear that men have around women? Like, what is this? And so he answered, and I still wasn't satisfied. I was like, yeah, but. So finally, I got to some semblance of an answer that I could grasp around. And if we have the physical world, something we feel power over, but you
Mhm.
guys have this spiritual world, this intuition. And so we don't understand that. That's not our strength, right? That's not there for it. So I think they know that's more powerful in the end.
Yeah.
So to let us have that, in addition to physical,
Yeah.
50% representation, like physically in the power of position of leadership. And then you got an intuition and a spirituality. Oh no, I'm too much control. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, so literally the emotional and spiritual intelligence that they want to suppress. So you, yeah,
Yes.
too emotional.
Oof. I have so many questions about Birthright Africa experience,
Yes.
and then also for us to dig deeper on. So we'll definitely do a part two. Can you share where people can find you? If there's any online space that you have,
Yeah,
some people don't, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
okay.
So professionally, people can follow me on LinkedIn, and there's Birthright Africa on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at Birthright Africa. There's a lot of great video testimonials of our alumni sharing this life transformation that has happened for them and how it sets them up on a path in their futures that they couldn't have even imagined was possible. And so, yeah, you can find us there.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Walla. It was wonderful having you.
Of course, anytime, Zainab. I can talk about this
Thank,
all day long.
thank you, everyone.